Are you ready for yet another YouTube series that is dedicated to lying to its audience? Are you ready for yet another way to rank and rate all of your favorite video games coming from an extremely biased opinion YouTuber that your thoughts may or may not align with, and you're sitting there thinking, maybe I don't like this guy. He doesn't like this one game that I absolutely love, so his opinions are invalid. Well, you've come to the right place. We're starting a new series called AAA Burnout. And with this series, we're going to rank AAA games based on their burnout ability when it comes to all their gameplay and mechanics and everything involved within the game. So not just your regular metrics judging how good the game is, but using the same ideas and concepts to judge how burnoutable the game is. Step aside to Gamer Ranks, their little, before you buy me series, and step aside IGN with your little, it was an 11 out of 10, my good sir, wonderful, wonderful gameplay and graphics, it was brilliant. That should get a bit more money, shouldn't it? It really should. And all the other game review companies out there, just step aside, okay? There's a new king in town, and it's me. And I feel way too douchey saying stuff like this, but I'm going with it. However, before we continue, let's catch all you guys up on what exactly a AAA title is. This is also to help people that may be a little bit lost. Okay, let's have a look here. AAA. Ah, yes. AAA. AAA, it's a noun. An unofficial title within the gaming industry amongst its fans, bestowed upon games of high praise, high budget, and often high quality. Oh wait, and it also says here, often produced by large producing companies, such as EA. Oh, well, now that that's out of the way, it's clear to see just how AAA games, now that you know that they're the big budget, big boy ones, can really just engrave themselves into the minds of all of us gamers, being at the forefront of the gaming industry and the gamers' minds themselves while you're cooking them dishes and you're making those homemade sweatpants and you're making them tunes at home, or you're just going to work. They're just there constantly churning in their brain, being like, Starfield got to be good this year, let's hope so, man. I don't know, it just sounds like No Man's Sky, but I don't want to say anything. And for most of last year, which you may find out is a bit of a theme when it comes to AAA Burnout titles, because just as it says, Burnout needs to happen in order for me to be able to judge this stuff down the road and relate everything back to the glorious Burnout. And for most of last year, the major title that was at the forefront of the gaming industry and roping all of us gamers in was a single one: Elden Ring. Now, I know what you're thinking. Surely not another Elden Ring video where they're just going to critically acclaim how great the game is and say, oh wow, the world was so massive. Oh, the gameplay was awesome. It was innovative. They had it so... Yeah, of course I'm going to say all that because it's all true. But I'm actually going to neg it a little bit as well. Sorry to you lovers out there, but there were some glaring issues that don't get talked about too much. However, before we get into the whole Elden Ring business scenario, I feel like first we need to take a little bit of a journey into the world of From Software and what exactly it is that they do. Now, From Software, in my opinion, consistently managed to deliver some of the best quality gaming experiences available on the market today, especially from AAA companies. Now, this is due to a formula they have seemed to master over a plethora of titles that they have entries in their major series. You have things like Dark Souls, which is a very beloved series and everybody knows why. You've heard how difficult this game is, whether you're part of the gaming community or not, and there is no option out. You just get absolutely touched up every time. And then you have their kind of spin-offs with Bloodborne and Sekiro and now Elden Ring. And all of these things come together and form the From Software experience, which can be summed up very easily. Allow me to just do that for you. Now, aside from it all being very horrid, there is generally a gist to all of these games that kind of make them what they are. Ultimately, there is a storyline that is based on you being a very low life form in whatever world they're presenting you with, and you kind of have to destroy and kill all these other life forms that are of increasing difficulty, and these act as your bosses. And these bad mamma jammas can really just grind your gears the wrong way. And that is part of the appeal, ultimately, is the frustration and just sheer and utter disappointment you get while playing the game. And it doesn't sound that convincing, but trust me, it's addictive. Aside from these bosses increasing in difficulty as time goes on, you also have to make yourself increase in difficulty to said bosses as time goes on. And you do this by collecting different forms of currency within the game from killing your enemies. Whether in the Dark Souls series, they're souls. Elden Ring, they're called runes. I'm pretty sure in Sekiro, it's just XP. And Bloodborne, I can never remember this one. I always want to say Blood Spores, but it would really help from software. Come closer. If you just kept the same thing across the board. Yeah. And now the big trick is when it does come to these souls, runes, XP, blood, whatever the fuck they're called. Collect these from killing enemies. That does come from bosses. It comes from regular enemies throughout the game. Even NPCs that may give you quests. Everything that is alive can be killable and therefore give you some form of this currency. However, if you were to die, all that currency you have built up drops at roughly the point of your death. So you could, let's say, have been farming for about 3 hours because there's this boss, this boss that has been making you its damn bitch for the past 3 years, or perhaps this boss that you realize is actually your father, not that daddy that left you 5 years ago. Your only resort to action of anything was to farm for souls, runes, XP, blood fucks, whatever it was. And you'll find quickly how annoying it is that when you mess up on a farming run and you drop your souls at that point, and then you have to go from your rest point all the way back to those souls without dying, on your attempt to retrieve these damn boys, and you were to cark it die on the way there, you realize something very quickly. Those damn boys are now damn gone. Now this becomes a real issue, especially within the game. These things act as a form of currency. They're used to get equipment upgrades, potions. They're also used to do one other magnificent thing, level you up. So if you have been farming these damn boys to beat this great big hulking father of a goddamn behemoth, well, you messed up and you just wasted 3 hours of your life. Congratulations. And that, my friends, is the From Software experience. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room, Elden Ring. And Elden Ring is very similar to all of these entries except for this one. It's just got a couple of key differences that really made it stand out compared to what else they had delivered in the past. However, let's start discussing Elden Ring by first discussing its playing longevity. And by this, I don't mean talking about how long the game is going to be valid for. I'm talking about just how long it takes for you to actually play the game itself, and how long you can kind of play it for before again getting burnt out. Now, saying that is basically the whole video, so strap yourselves in. Personally for me, it took me about 100 or so hours to get finally burnt out from this game, and that was countless hours of grinding and just doing everything I possibly could. And I purely believe that the biggest reason for this was just how big and immersive this open world was. I cannot stress enough just how insane it ended up being. It blew my expectations completely out of the park. And now this big open world usually makes or breaks this game for the majority of people. However, for me and most of my friends, it definitely made it more than broke it. And this open world came to gamers as a big surprise, because we already thought that From Software had their own little kind of open world design that they had already mastered. And And what it used to be was you would always have different areas which acted as stages within the game, and each level managed to have like shortcuts and stuff to get back to the original one. It was all like an interlinked map that was really good and helped you kind of feel a bit more free. They'll give you more than one choice, and that was how you could play the game. I can think of instances in Dark Souls 3 and Demon Souls and Dark Souls, where in which the path that they've put you on isn't one that you have to go down, because you can take more than one way and still get to the exact same point. And this is a very solid design that us gamer boys and gamer girls really grew to love, and it was a core integral part of what was seemingly their game design. And they present us with this. I don't know exactly how long it takes to get from one point to the other, but let me tell you, it is not a short one. This immense open world paired with From Software's patented next to zero hand holding, and I say next to zero because yes, there are signs in the floor, but most of the time it's just people trolling you to thinking there's treasure at the other end of this cliff when there never is. And they have little lines from each side of grace, which are your save points, and they kind of direct you toward the next one. But because there's about 20 million of these on the map, you don't need it, because you're just going to run into one soon anyways. The freedom of hand-holding is something seldom found within games that are made these days, especially with AAA titles. They love to just hand-hold you the whole way and make you do exactly what they want you to do to a T. And it kind of feels a bit detrimental and brings you out of immersive states within games quite often. I find that a lot of the time within Rockstar games, or sometimes even Naughty Dog games, it does seem to take you out of some form of immersion that they're trying to bring you in, when you can't do things that would lead to the same result, but just a slightly different way to the ones they take you. If you want a good idea on the thing that I'm kind of talking about, here's a cheeky little video made by Jakey. He does a great little thing on that. Go check it out. And this zero hand holding within Elden Ring made me feel openly immersed within the game itself. For example, I chose a Wretch build, and with the Wretch build it comes baseline stats and next to no weapons, and you have zero armor. You play however the game pretty much takes you. From a role-playing aspect, that helped the game for me immensely. I was basically somebody who had just escaped wherever they were and had to pick up loot, and the loot guided me along the way that my character will then develop his certain skills and attributes to accompany for what he was getting at the time. So I didn't have much of a predetermined choice. I had to find what I was going to be. And that was a big thing for this game for me, was that it made me feel like I was this person traversing the world of Elden Ring, and I was doing all this stuff. However, I am not some person that's looking through this thing with freaking rose-colored goggles and being like, Elden Ring. Not a single one of those 100 hours was wasted upon you. No, I do understand its flaws. And its freedom from hand-holding is actually one of its biggest flaws that is in the face of everybody that plays it. I say this because most of the people that I spoke to that couldn't get into the game or had to keep on trying and trying and trying again was just because they didn't have enough form of direction, or they didn't know exactly what it was they were trying to do within the game, and that kind of let them down a bit. From Software games always do this. They don't have any form of letting you know except for NPC interactions. And once you exhaust the dialogue, it gets extremely irritating trying to figure out which way you have to go without having to pop yourself out of immersion and watch a damn YouTube tutorial video on the quest line you're attempting to do. And this is one of the major criticisms that this game should have. Now, I understand, and especially for immersion's sake, there is no way that your character is going to carry a tattered journal on them full of all the quests and tick them off as they go by, but there is no reason to even not have that in general. And even a game that they seemingly got heaps of inspiration from, such as Breath of the Wild, has a quest log within it. I remember that I probably played Breath of the Wild for like a solid 30 hours when it came out. For whatever reason I stopped. About 3 months ago I picked it back up again, and I continued right from where I left off because I knew exactly where I was going, what I was going, because of a quest log. A lack of quest log within Elden Ring has me so uninspired to actually finish the game. And you heard that right, I've played this damn thing for 100 hours. I still haven't finished this game. This game has still eluded me to this very day. I don't know how it ends, I don't know the story of the ending. I'm up to a certain point, I can beat it, but I can't be bothered picking the game up again to try and do so because of my lack of direction. And I believe there's an easy fix to this kind of lack of direction. You have a journal, but not one that is like a quest log, just a tattered journal type idea where you've written key phrases or key parts of your journey so far, so you're up to date on what is kind of going on. So you have an NPC reaction and it says something that's blanket statement and vague of what's been going on, and being like, okay, this guy wanted me to go here to do this type thing, and that's it. Or this person mentioned this, maybe I should check it out. And then you attempt to find and check everything out. You don't have to use quest markers or anything because then that does still take you out of the immersion and it's not a free open world experience, but you have to find all that stuff yourself. Whether you use the map or you remember a landmark that you're like, actually, I think it's there. All this kind of stuff would still help the free open world experience, but then also help people's burnout ability because they don't need to go and look at YouTube for these things, and they have more of a sense of direction throughout playing the game. And overall, I feel like the freedom that the game does give you does add a lot to the burnout ability of it, especially the open world with how much you can traverse it and look to find, but also this is the biggest breaker for the majority of people, which then make it an extremely burnoutable game because there's such a lack of direction and they just don't know what to do with it all. Now, as much as I would like to harp on about the game's open world and how great it is or what its flaws are, there's still a couple more things that I need to just talk about, and one of those are the dungeons within the open world. In my opinion, the dungeons within Elden Ring provide an extreme dampener on the actual burnout ability of the game as a whole, as they become extremely repetitive throughout your gameplay experience. Within Elden Ring, there are 4 main types of dungeons, and they all seem to repeat themselves and have the exact same formula throughout them, which, you know, is nothing that we have never seen before amongst any type of gaming company ever. Perhaps some beloved title that's been around for 12 years and still getting milked the hell out of, and people really love it. And, you know, there's a couple of things like caves, and you see the door guard and all this kind of stuff. Anyway, unlike the aforementioned, barely mentioned, alluded to company that, you know, was exploited for an extremely obvious joke, at least From Software have attempted to rectify the boring and repetitive and staleness of their dungeons as a whole. Within the Catacombs, which is a single dungeon type, they do have lots of ways that they have tried to spice it up by changing the layout or changing the idea or adding little puzzles in there to make it more interesting. And yes, I'm still looking at you with your damn diamond claw or golden claw that have those freaking symbols on the claw itself that match the door. Wasn't much puzzle solving there, was there? Anyway, sorry, PTSD. Anyway, From Software actually do add a couple of these really cool, intricate ideas into the Catacombs, but they're seldom repeated and you don't get much of a variety from them overall. There was one that I really did enjoy, and there were these series of chests that when open teleport you to a different chest. And then you have to keep doing those in a specific sequence within the actual catacombs itself, and eventually you'll get to the final place where the key is, so you can go back to the original area and open the door to get to the boss. I thought that was a great idea because I was genuinely lost on that for like 10-20 minutes because I couldn't understand that there was a sequence of treasure chests to go through. And I'm glad that happened. It threw me, made the game a bit more interesting, but we needed more of that from the game, and it just didn't really help the staleness of dungeons as a whole. Now let's talk about the more fun stuff within the game. I'm not talking about the big open world that everyone just seems to look on, or the dungeons that can be boring or have a little bit of spice and then be boring again. No, I'm talking about the gameplay, and more specifically the actual way your character works within the game now. Now, Elden Ring brings a lot more to the table when it does come to general gameplay. However, most of it is just a smoother version of the previous titles, especially the Souls series. However, they do add a mount, and the mount is good. It is fun until you get ragdolled off it all the time and you'd rather be in a Rockstar game. But that is neither here nor there. I am also referring to your character builds in general. Before, back in these games and this game, you kind of just had a couple of basic varieties that you could do. You could still mix it up, but the game kind of drove you to do the speedy, dexy bitch boy build or the big, stronky, tanky boy build. Now you can do so many more builds. You can be praise the Lord faithful boy. You can be strong, strafing corner magic boy. You can be a mixture of any of all these kind of boys because they've added so much more and so many other more viable ways to play the game with more spells. They had charms so you can imbue weapons with stuff. You have more weapon variety. It is crazy what they've done to it, and I genuinely enjoyed it. I myself ended up going from being your regular speedy dexy bitch boy because I had a longsword to finding these little freaking metal balls on. Then I became a Rocky Balboa type boy. Then Rocky Balboa beat Apollo Creed, and then finally had to find God because he beat his ass so badly that now he is a praise the Lord faithful Rocky Balboa type boy. And that's a fun build. You just mink. I genuinely don't see any dampener in the way that they actually have the character creation and the build that you can make these days. It is a big S+ in my longevity playbook for this game of Elden Ring, especially as the weapons that they have now given you, you can have legendary weapons or regular ones, and legendary weapons can have different forms of attack, which is really cool, such as a Sword of Night of Flame, a personal favorite of mine, has a moonbeam that just blazes everything in a straight line, or an AoE fire attack that just burns everything within the radius of its attack. It is an insane game with some insanely fun things to do. Not only that, they also added a thing called Ashes of War, and my thing with the legendary weapons, they already have these Ashes of War inbuilt onto them. But you can get generic ones and put them on your generic weapons as well. One of my favorite things to do was to put them on like little speedy things. So I'll put like the wind step on like a whip, for example. So then what would happen was I would whip someone, and instead of dodging, I would use a wind step, and I would just teleport basically to a point that's just outside of my dodging range and whack him again for some more fun, because that's what this game ends up being when you play it for long enough. Fun. And the best part about this is that these legendary weapons actually are tailored to suit pretty much every build and every kind of thing you could imagine, and it just makes exploring that much more rewarding when you go into this massive open world and you magically find the weapon that magically suits your build so perfectly. It's a very satisfying and good feeling. And not many games, in my opinion, give you this kind of feeling to this very day. Now, overall, I feel like it is a very hard game to judge the playing longevity of, the burnout ability of, because there are so many factors to think about. The open world and how much that will dampen or greaten it, the dungeons, the gameplay, game style, and then just your regular From Software build in general. The people that I know that love From Software games absolutely loved Elden Ring, and they played it to within an inch of its life, have multiple characters over 200 hours. It's crazy. I know people that are still on their first build playing it religiously to this very day, and it's like a year and a half after its release. Again, insane. People, new NG plus, a whole bunch of this stuff all the time. So the From Software design and way they make games is not going to be an issue when it does come to burnout ability. Now the map, how big the world actually is probably the biggest dampener that this game will ever receive, and that is because it will make or break this game for people. Even people that I know that were avid lovers of Dark Souls and Bloodborne and Sekiro absolutely could not get into this game as a result of the open world. And for that, I feel like despite its long comings, it has a lot of shortcomings, and unfortunately, not much of my coming. So it itself ends up being a bit of a dampener on the playing longevity of the game. The dungeons are an essential within a game this big. You need dungeons of like great size or great amounts to make traversing this world plausible and more interesting, because just having everything on the surface level kind of bleh. Now, they did do a pretty cool thing with it, and there were some underground cities, but at the same time, they didn't really count as dungeons at the end of the day. Overall, the dungeons do add a lot to the burnout ability of the game, but they also take away a little bit because they get a bit too repetitive. So let's just say it's a negligible impact on the game itself. In my opinion, the way that the character build system works and the weapons and how they're made and run these days is actually what is carrying this game a long way. You can do so much cool stuff within the game now. It's genuine. So overall, combining all these factors, I feel like Elden Ring gets an S+ on the AAA Burnout ranking scale. And this is because it is the benchmark of games for me. I have never poured more hours into a single game at a single time than this. I do have more in The Witcher and NBA 2K19 apparently overall, but in one single go, in one single slog, this game right here has been the least burnoutable game I have ever come across in my time on this earth. Hey you! Don't forget to like and subscribe to this video if you're enjoying the content and want to see more AAA Burnout series stuff. It'd be greatly appreciated.